Hey guys, and welcome back to Joe Code Yo, and part 4 of a serial of stories together called What a Tangled Web We Weave, where we talk about the towns in and around Johnston County that are so connected, deeper than most people know. And this is part 4. If you have not heard part 1, 2, or 3, we've been detailing the background of some of our neighboring towns of Johnston County. Now, I know this is Joe Yo about Johnston County, but you know what? You'll see. This is part 4 and telling it in like a story format, and here we go. After the founders of the American Revolution began to die off, George Washington, John Adams, Thomas Jefferson, the fourth President James Madison himself was a founding father, but he saw that this nation, it might just make it after all. He also saw that the biggest danger to its survival would be sectionalism, or sectionalism is the assembled states sort of allying together into groups, potentially against each other. Madison saw that sectionalism among the states had existed before the United States was even born, but Madison and the others were afraid that it was getting worse. The founding fathers were not there to keep it together, and the new was wearing off. The thing that brought the sections, North, West, and South together in the beginning was the common enemy of the king. What kept them together was the knowledge that other countries, such as France, did not want them to stay together and were trying to break them apart. Now that those threats had effectively subsided, President Madison and some in the new generation of American leaders in the early 1800s, like Henry Clay in the West, John C. Calhoun in the South, and Daniel Webster in the North, they sort of all knew that the nation had to bind together quickly or lose it all. They had to have a new common purpose. So, they together decided and agreed that railroads, roads, and canals designed to bridge those sections were necessary, and they were built in a hurry, literally stitching up growing sectional gashes. There are also sectional differences that are going to exist, although on a smaller scale inside those states. In Virginia, for example, which was then Virginia and West Virginia, there was the agricultural East with its plantations and slavery, and the mountainous West, where neither one of those existed. The sections had different values and lifestyles and eventually different loyalties. The same exists for North Carolina, which not only saw differences in values and lifestyle, but also had straight-up divisions of people that genuinely did not like each other, and which roughly ran west to east. So following this National Transportation Network plan, the North Carolina legislature, taking a cue from these new leaders, they're going to authorize the creation of a railroad in 1848 that would connect the East with the Piedmont. Construction started 3 years later in Greensboro and stretched out in either direction, eventually reaching Charlotte, which was North Carolina's only mint to the west, and its banking center, even then with a new and partly artificial deep water port in the east, which was called Shepherd's Point, connect Charlotte to the coast. Shepherd's Point would soon be renamed Morehead City after the North Carolina Railroad's first president, John Motley Morehead, who will also later be governor. Now, much like the North-South Railroad that we've been talking about so far in this series, depots were established along the way for refueling, loading, and unloading the trains, but depots require land to build them on and investors to buy land and to subdivide that land, sell lots, basically invest. And as the tracks of the North Carolina Railroad were being laid eastward, depots were being built. Depot in Greensboro, High Point, which was literally the high point on the railroad, which is why it's called that. A few more depots. There was one in Raleigh, which crossed the Cape Fear in Northern at the Varina Station. Then over to Auburn on the Wake-Johnston line in 1849. You'll have also the Gulley store, which is where we're going to stop today at this depot stop. Gulley store in 1856. It's going to go stretch to Smithville Depot in 1855, Pine Level, the town of Eureka, and on to the east. And as they're building these railroads, the Civil War is going to halt it, of course, because 5 years later you have the Civil War. It's going to stop all that building. Now, of course, later, when the Civil War is over with, 1866, you'll see the establishment of more depots, Mitchener Station in 1866, Wilson's Mills in 1869, Boone Hill in 1873, Goldsboro in 1893. But let's go back to Gulley's store in 1856. See, Gulley's store had been known for a few years as Stallings Station. Now, Stallings Station was on the main east-west stage road from Hillsborough to New Bern, and it was also a junction of the north-south stage road from Raleigh to Wilmington. And as that main junction, it was one of the biggest horse-changing stations in the state, because you can't ride a horse across the state. Everything gets tired. And this horse-changing station was run by a widow named Sarah Stallings. And when the North Carolina Railroad sought to establish a depot at nearby Gulley's store, she was the one who sold acres of land for a town to develop around it, which would later be called Clayton. The location of Stallings Station and the establishment of the railroad depot at Gulley's store, which the Gulley store also served as a post office for area residents, along with a guy running it was named Needham Gulley. He was the postmaster. That's why it's called Gulley store. But the location of Stallings Station and the establishment of the railroad depot helped businesses such as merchants or mercantile shops and dry goods stores. It helped them to grow and expand into transportation. And the most famous of those was called J.G. Barber and Sons. Now, the Barber mule train ran up and down the old Indian Trail and the stage roads, carrying cotton and turpentine to the capital, to sell the goods. Now, after the Civil War, outside investors saw opportunity in junctions just like this, and this one in particular, and want to establish new businesses. There was one of these guys who was a Confederate veteran and a war refugee. He ran away. His name was not from the Confederate Army, from the Union Army. His name was Captain A.M. Noble from New Bern. Is going to see opportunity. He's going to establish a mercantile firm in 1865 near Gulley's store, taking advantage of the location. It grew prosperous quite quickly, which led other shops to open near it. And 2 years later, this same Confederate veteran and war refugee, Captain A.M. Noble, I have looked all over the place trying to find what A.M. stood for, but I can't find it yet. But I will say, 2 years later, he saw another opportunity along the North Carolina Railroad. A new town was going to be built around this depot, and it looked like a major one, and it needed investors. So, in fact, he found that another Confederate veteran was taking the lead on this one, and Captain A.M. Noble decided to buy in. So he sold everything in his former community, which would later be called Clayton, to buy commercial and residential lots at $100 per lot. There was a smart, savvy farmer with the mind of a very shrewd businessman who saw opportunities himself and bought every dime of Noble stock. His name was Ashley Horn. Where was this new promising community? In the next episode. Y'all, it's been fantastic. And the last part of this serial, part 5 of What a Tangled Web We Weave, is coming up soon. Hope you enjoyed it. Talk later.